Hello everyone and welcome to this new grand thema. Over the past few years, more and more companies have turned to SaaS solutions, even to govern all of their operations for some of them. What does this mean for businesses? To discuss this topic, I have the pleasure to have Liz Herbert, VP and Principal Analyst at Forrester. Hello, Liz.
Hello, how are you today?
Fine, thank you. How about you?
Very good.
So over the past few years, as I was saying, SaaS solutions have emerged and become a convenient solution for a lot of companies. So could you tell us what is the proportion of SaaS tools which are now deployed within companies, and how has it progressed over the years?
Yes, we are tracking new purchases as well as what is existing in the organizations today. And what I can tell you is that in many categories for new purchases, we see 75 to 80% or more now as software as a service. Of course, there are many legacy applications that are still in-house. They still have life left. And so the overall picture is not quite that heavy. But in terms of any of the new modernization efforts across major application categories, it really has become a SaaS story. Software as a service has been around for over 20 years. If you look at some of the early SaaS entrants, they arrived in the late 1990s. And a lot of the historic challenges around areas like security or cost of ownership or risk have really gone away, as many organizations now see that software as a service brings great benefits. So this trend is something that's continuing. And notably, what we're seeing now is that a lot of the categories that had been laggards, such as analytics or ERP or manufacturing software, those are now converting over as well. So you might think of SaaS in places like CRM or HR, where it's been adopted for quite some time. But now we're seeing that last wave of conversion starting to take off at this year.
So you were mentioning the figure of 75% or 80%. Is it a global figure, or are there big disparities from an industry to another, for example?
So that is a global figure, but yes, there are disparities. And in particular, there are certain countries where software as a service has taken off more quickly. Now, interestingly, the United States is one of those countries, but a lot of the countries where we're seeing it are actually high growth, fast moving countries that don't have as much infrastructure. So certain countries in Asia, for example, they're turning towards software as a service. They don't necessarily have the baggage of some of the legacy infrastructure, and they have significant growth. Many parts of Europe have been a bit slower, often because of privacy and security concerns and the availability, which is now here, of being able to ensure that the data is staying within the EU. Most leading SaaS vendors now offer plenty of options for that to happen. And there are some countries where surcharges related to things like bandwidth have been an inhibitor for greater SaaS adoption because it's changing the cost profile. So yes, there are big differences by country and also by industry. So for example, most organizations that are very fast moving, dynamic, and connected, they're moving to software as a service. Even a lot of public sector governments all around the world are moving to software as a service. But in some industries, especially heavy manufacturing or places where you have workers who are not in connected environments, they maybe are out in the field with a device, but not on the internet. Those types of companies have generally been slower to adopt software as a service. So the trend is the same, but it is happening at different speeds and different adoption rates depending on country and industry, as you might suspect.
Okay, the figures, the numbers that you were giving are rather important, but will there be at one point a glass ceiling, so to speak, or is SaaS bound to gain even more important in the future?
Correct. We see already saturation. So in many of these categories, they are becoming saturated. You know, in categories like CRM and HR, the vast majority of companies have already modernized and converted to SaaS. So you're certainly going to see a slowing, and we already are seeing a slowing of the growth in those types of areas. The bigger growth will now come from some of those laggard categories and other parts of the business that have been slower to adopt. And also correct, we don't necessarily think that the world will ever be 100% SaaS. You know, if you look around at organizations, especially the ones that Forrester works with, who tend to be the largest, most global organizations, They're still running applications from before I was born, and I'm not all that young. And the same, there will always be places where what they're running today is good enough. It may be on a mainframe, it may be on a client server application. And so we don't expect that software as a service will take off everywhere.
Okay, the promise of the SaaS for a lot of companies that can make a lot of things and tasks simpler, more efficient, more productive. What is the company's feedback on this? Has this promise been kept?
So I would tell you a couple of things. Number one, in general, most clients tell us that they are getting great value out of software as a service, that in general, it is easier to use. It is more built for business-led adaptation, meaning that the business can do much more of the configuration or report building or other types of elements that they used to have to wait for IT. So that has been a positive. Most SaaS is easily available on any mobile device, so that has been a positive for adoption. Mm-hmm. And in general, if you look at the software as a service from the vendor release schedule, many of these solutions have multiple automatic releases per year, just like we all experience with our consumer applications or our mobile phones. Yeah. There's constant innovation, and that's very different than the older way. However, there are still some problems. First of all, a lot of companies are still over customizing or not doing appropriate change management, and also sometimes overbuying and buying the wrong types of products. So SaaS is not a silver bullet for everything that can go wrong in technology. And so while it has great benefits, and many clients continue to build on the successes they've had, there are also numerous areas where you have to be very cautious, because you can create all the same problems as the on-premises world in the new SaaS mode. And in particular, that idea of shelfware, meaning unused things that you're paying for, as well as the complexity. Adding technical debt can happen in SaaS as well. And sometimes companies have to be more careful, because when you're going very fast, you're not always balancing that with looking at the bigger picture and making sure that you're setting up a holistic solution that makes sense.
Yeah, so you were talking about change management and technical debts. So SaaS includes, of course, the I would say the technical side of this, but it's very important for companies to keep in mind that adjustments, adaptations have to be made even on the HR and the very human side of the business.
Exactly. So many of these solutions, if you look at the way that companies adopt them, they are changing the way that a business process runs. And many companies, as they move to software as a service, they start to move to more standard practices, either for their industry or for the function, like you mentioned, HR. And so to be able to do that effectively requires thinking differently and investing in change. Always with big technology projects, change matters. But one key difference that we're seeing versus when I joined Forrester 20 years ago is that now people are much more happy to adopt something as is. You can call it vanilla or fit to standard. And so there's a lot more changing the organization to consume those best practices. And that's important, because if you look at the continuous stream of innovation and also the power of the ecosystem in a SaaS customer base where everybody is running the same version, if you're off doing your own thing, highly customized, very different, you won't get those same benefits of working with everybody else in the community and taking advantage of the new innovations. So we do see usually the 80-20 rule is what companies think about, which is 80% fit to standard and 20% customized. But of course, with software as a service, that customization is in more low code and business-led ways than in the past. But importantly, to be able to do that, you have to invest in change management, and not just up front, but as those continuous releases come out, it's an ongoing investment in change management to really get value out of these solutions and drive your business forward.
Okay, so you were talking about the share of companies that tend to adapt and personalize these how could I say, the way that they handle SaaS as a whole. I was wondering, is it because sometimes they feel that that their hands are tied with SaaS, that they have less room for maneuver, that maybe it has to be SaaS to adapt to their processes rather than the opposite?
So interestingly, in the older days, that was true. In the older days, software as a service was not very customizable. And some clients thought that was great because it eliminated some of the conversations around where should we develop and extend. But today, that's not usually the case. Today, most software as a service tools, they have a sophisticated platform. They support low code as well as real code and integrations. So while there might still be some where you're limited in your customization, most leading SaaS tools of today have all the same customization power that you ever had. And so it puts more of a burden on the organization to decide, how do we use that? It's very powerful, but we don't want to recreate the same issues of the past. So some clients told me they actually liked it better when they didn't have to make the choice and fight with the business about where to do it. But now they have to have all those same conversations for the most part.
Okay, so you were telling us a lot about what's been done for the past 2 decades, what everything that SaaS tools can do. I was wondering what's left in store from SaaS. What can SaaS do that hasn't been done so far?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big shifts now, probably won't surprise you, is the shift to AI. And if you look at the leading enterprise applications in the world, almost all of them have a shift to SaaS. Almost all of them have a heavy shift to artificial intelligence, all types, not just Gen AI, but all types of artificial intelligence. So what we're seeing is that these tools and part of the automatic upgrades and the continuous innovation is now shifting to AI. And so for a lot of the organizations that I'm working with, they're questioning, is the AI really ready? Where can we really use it? Because in many cases, it's there. It's coming to you through the seamless automatic updates. Sometimes you have to pay extra, sometimes it's included. But that is really the next frontier. I think we're seeing it everywhere that AI, not that AI is new at all, but it is the next frontier for enterprise software and many other areas of technology.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Liz. Thank you for all your answers on this topic.
Yes, thank you for having me on.
As for me, I will be glad to see you in very soon in the next Forester video. Bye.